You ever hear the sound of a lawnmower revving like a battle cry? Because that's how this war with my HOA Karen began. One morning, as I was sipping my coffee, I noticed her standing at the edge of my yard, arms crossed, lips pursed so tight she looked like she was sucking on a lemon. The woman didn't even say hello. She just jabbed a finger at my lawn and barked, "Grass over 6 inches violates the HOA covenant. Cut it, or else." Now, my lawn wasn't some wild mess. Sure, it had a few longer blades than usual, but it wasn't a prairie. But the way she spoke, you'd think I was running a hay farm. I tried to reason with her, told her I'd been busy with work, but she wasn't interested in excuses. She pulled a bright yellow violation notice from her purse, like a gunslinger drawing a pistol, slapped it onto my mailbox, and strutted off like she'd just won a battle. That should have been the end of it, right? Just mow the grass, keep it short, avoid the fine. But something about her smug little smile when she walked away lit a fire inside me. The kind of fire that whispers, "Don't just take this. Make her regret messing with you." So I hatched a plan. Not to just cut the grass, but to take her precious rulebook and toss it right back in her face. If Karen thought my grass was too tall, well, she hadn't seen anything yet. The very next weekend, I loaded up my truck with seeds, vines, and shrubs, plants that weren't just tall but towering. Bamboo shoots that could climb higher than her roof. Flowering bushes that spilled out like jungle walls. Creeping vines that would wrap around every fence post. I didn't just want a lawn anymore. I wanted a rainforest. Day after day, I dug, planted, and watered, all while Karen lurked from across the street, scribbling notes on a clipboard like some suburban detective. Neighbors walked by, curious, some even cheering me on. "What are you building, man?" they'd ask. I'd grin and say, "Oh, just giving Karen a little shade." By the time the first shoots began to sprout, I knew I had crossed the line between lawn care and open rebellion. And honestly, it felt amazing. Little did Karen know she had just started a battle she couldn't possibly win. It didn't take long before the jungle started to take shape. The bamboo stretched skyward, thick and fast, almost like it knew it had a score to settle with Karen. The creeping vines snaked their way across my fence, twisting into green chains that looked both wild and beautiful. Even my flowers, sunflowers, hibiscus, and bird of paradise, shot up like neon flags waving in defiance. Neighbors stopped more often now, marveling at the transformation. Some kids even whispered about it, being the coolest yard in the neighborhood. Grinned every time I heard it. But Karen? Oh, Karen was losing her mind. Every morning, she'd march out in her robe, clutching that clipboard like it was her Bible. She'd snap photos, mutter under her breath, and storm back inside. I knew she was gathering evidence, the kind she thought would bury me at the next HOA board meeting. Sure enough, within a week, I got an official letter. Bold red letters across the top screamed, "Final warning, remove all unapproved vegetation immediately or face fines of $250 per day." Most people would panic at that. But me? I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Because here's the thing. I'd already read the HOA handbook cover to cover. Nowhere in it did it say anything about bamboo, vines, or flowers. All it mentioned was, grass height must not exceed 6 inches. And guess what? My grass was trimmed perfectly, not an inch too long. So technically I wasn't breaking a single rule. That's when I decided to up the ante. I went online and ordered more exotic plants. Ferns, palms, even a banana tree. I turned my weekends into jungle building sessions. By the time I was done, stepping into my yard felt like walking into another world. You couldn't even see my house from the sidewalk anymore. It was swallowed in green. Karen, of course, lost her mind. She stormed over one evening, shouting so loud the whole block could hear. "This is outrageous! You've turned this place into a swamp. You're lowering property values," she screeched, jabbing her finger at me like a teacher scolding a child. But I just smiled, leaned on my shovel and said, "Funny, because I don't see a single violation. Do you?" Her face went red as a stop sign. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. For once, she had no comeback. And that silence told me something important. The jungle was working. The real fun began when the jungle started attracting more than just curious neighbors. Birds swooped in, nesting in the bamboo. Butterflies fluttered through the vines, turning my yard into a living postcard. Even a family of rabbits made their home under the thick shrubs. My so-called unruly mess had become a sanctuary, and people loved it. Well, almost everyone. Karen was a different story. She couldn't stand it. Every time she walked by, she'd glare like the plants themselves were mocking her. And in a way, they were. My yard was alive, vibrant, full of color, while hers looked like a sterile golf course, flat, dull, and obsessively trimmed. One Saturday morning, she finally snapped. I caught her standing at the edge of my yard with a pair of hedge clippers in her hand. She was muttering to herself, clearly working up the courage to trespass and start hacking away. I stepped out onto my porch before she could make her move. "Karen," I called, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You planning on gardening in my yard today?" She froze, her face turning pale. The clippers trembled in her hand. Then she spun on her heel and stormed off, yelling something about calling the board immediately. And call them she did. Within days, I was summoned to an HOA meeting. Karen sat at the head of the table, practically vibrating with smugness. She had photos, documents, even a slideshow prepared, pointing to every leaf and branch in my yard as though it was a crime scene. "This," she said dramatically, pointing at a picture of my banana tree, "is an abomination. This jungle is bringing down the neighborhood. He must be fined, and the plants must be removed immediately." The board members shifted uncomfortably. They glanced at her evidence, then back at me. That's when I pulled out my own copy of the HOA handbook. Calmly, I flipped to the landscaping section and read aloud. Grass must be maintained at a height of 6 inches or less. Then I looked each board member in the eye and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my grass is exactly 4.5 inches tall. Everything else? Not prohibited. Not even mentioned. So unless you want to admit you're enforcing imaginary rules, I think this meeting's over." For a moment, the room was silent. Then one board member actually chuckled. Another nodded. Karen's face, pure rage. And I knew right then this war wasn't over. She was going to take it to the next level. If Karen couldn't beat me with rules, she was going to try something else, something dirtier. It started with anonymous complaints to the city inspector. Suddenly, I had officials showing up at my door, claiming there were reports of rodents, mosquitoes, and unsafe vegetation. Each time they left empty-handed. The inspector even told me, honestly, "This is one of the most well-kept gardens I've seen. Whoever's calling us clearly has a grudge." No prizes for guessing who that was. But Karen wasn't done. One night, around midnight, I heard rustling outside. I peeked through the blinds and caught her in the act, clipping at my vines with scissors like some kind of deranged gardener ninja. I flipped on the porch light and shouted, "Smile, Karen! You're on camera!" Because, yep, I'd already installed security cameras. Within seconds, she was caught in crystal clear HD, trespassing and destroying property. She dropped the scissors and bolted like a teenager caught sneaking out. The next morning, I filed a police report. And let me tell you, the moment an officer knocked on her door, the entire neighborhood gathered to watch. Karen tried to play innocent, claiming she was just tidying up for the good of the community. But when the officer showed her the footage, her face went from smug to horrified in seconds. Trespassing, vandalism, harassment, it all added up. She didn't go to jail, but she did get slapped, with fines and a warning that any repeat incident would result in charges. For someone who lived by rules, that was a brutal blow. But the final nail in the coffin came at the next HOA meeting. Word had spread about her midnight plant attack. Neighbors who once tolerated her bossiness started pushing back. One even said, "If anyone's lowering property values, it's you, Karen." The board, clearly fed up, voted to strip her of her self-appointed landscape enforcement duties. She sat there fuming, powerless for the first time in years. And me? I leaned back, hands folded, trying not to grin too wide. The jungle was still standing, greener and lusher than ever. Birds chirped, butterflies danced, and the neighbors actually started enjoying walking past my place. In the end, I didn't just keep my yard. I turned it into a victory monument. Every leaf, every vine, every towering stalk of bamboo was proof that sometimes the best way to win against a Karen is to let nature do the talking. If you enjoyed this wild HOA showdown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own Karen stories.